All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully, we had a good Monday here for those that are in the States. My name is Swizz, and I will be your pilot here for Level Up Mental Health. Welcome to the inaugural show. Really hoping that this can be, as I was saying, kind of the intro video, this could be pretty impactful on the journey that we have here. But we got a good first foray into our show here, and we're going to be examining uh, this session on anger. So with anger, I always think it's a good topic to kind of lead us off here. I'll share just kind of a little personal anecdote. So being a father of two, I often have some difficulties with it here and there because little kids will be little kidding around, right? So what's important to recognize is that we all have anger, right? We all have this emotion, and what we can do is just also understand that it's just a part of us, and we have to be able to try to recognize and try to kind of develop the skills that are needed to ensure that we can reduce that intensity that we're experiencing, right? So, what we'll kind of go through here, we'll kind of have some discussions associated with it. We'll go over a worksheet, some different skills we can kind of work on here to target addressing our anger difficulties if you may have it. And yeah, we'll see kind of where that takes us here through the evening. So let's back it up and let's just focus on what is anger exactly, right? And one of the kind of quotes I always like to kind of lead into this is knowing about anger is related to other parts that we may be experiencing. So, for example, one of the things that can be of note is the fact that with anger, there's a nice quote here that says, "Anger is sadness's bodyguard." And I always like hearing this quote here. It's a kind of a thinker in a sense because essentially what it's saying is that anger itself is not the main cause. There's something deeper underneath. And I think that's something to think about as you are going forward. And this is an area that needs to be addressed, is being able to kind of look at what is the deeper rooted concern? What is kind of the deeper rooted issue that may be leading to that feeling of anger, right? Is it the fact that you had been hurt, either emotionally or spiritually, obviously physically, right? Had it been kind of jealousy or anything else that you can kind of identify, and even some anxiousness can be kind of involved with there that can lead into kind of that anger and frustration about that. A lot of that is that kind of response, that protection that we may have, that is kind of the immediate, the response for what we're experiencing there. So, what we'll do is we'll kind of take a look at this worksheet here that I have, and if you are here with, with this stream here, maybe you can kind of follow along, or I always kind of recommend to the clients that I work with to have just kind of a paper pen with you to kind of go through these exercises too, so you feel like you're able to ensure that you're going to get something out of this, right? So let's get it started here with looking at this worksheet, and we'll kind of go around and talk about it here. Let's just pull it up. That's not it. Of course it's not showing up as we are working towards this. set up before, but we have made it. Okay. As we fit this to the screen here, and here we are. So we are at our worksheet here about anger being the umbrella emotion. So I think kind of related to what we were saying here with anger is that anger is not the primary concern, right? There's something deeper underneath is what we're trying to kind of get at. And that's why it can kind of be viewed as the umbrella emotion. So it's always kind of interesting. Again, one of the biggest things is to identify, to me, I always believe the why. Why are we experiencing the way, whatever we're experiencing there? What is the cause of that? What is the reason? And the more we kind of ask those questions and think about these things, we can really dive deeper into kind of those causes, right? So this worksheet here that I have up is kind of a great way to be able to ask these introspective questions, right? Because again, we want to try to understand ourselves. Ultimately, the responses that we experience from whatever the trigger may be, right, is due to some underlying cause. So whenever you get the chance to kind of go through these, ask yourself these questions. How do you respond when you're angry, right? This is important to kind of recognize what is it that usually happens when you are going through these kind of anger difficulties. Do you yell? Do you scream? Do you clench your fist? Do you feel all warm? Do you feel sweaty? Is your heart race, right? If you're able to identify what your anger looks like, it's going to help you to kind of practice yourself to limit the intensity of it going forward, right? The more you're aware of how your anger responds from whatever that incident is, the better well equipped you will be to kind of tackle it, right? Moving on to the second question here, what was the last event that caused an increase in anger? Again, identifying what led to this. And the more that we understand ourselves, the more we understand the causes of it, we can identify if there is any themes, right? Like, let's say, for example, there is a particular person that just bugs the crap out of you, right? And you don't know why, for whatever reason. And the more you can kind of identify and log those episodes of when that is occurring, you'll be able to dive into more of that situation and look at, okay, what are kind of the connecting themes here? Is it something that someone is saying? Is there something that this person has a kind of philosophy about that through my development may have led to a trigger to me, right? It doesn't have to be that deep, but just kind of something to kind of think about. Again, looking at kind of the third question here, how do we respond? Again, always important to ensure we're aware of what we are experiencing. Now, this last one here, did this fit the facts of the situation, why or not? You'll hear throughout our discussions here in our presentations about what it means to fit the facts, and there's a great skill that is taught throughout dialectical behavioral therapy called checking the facts. And essentially what that is when you are experiencing an intense emotion, does your kind of reaction kind of fit the facts for that, right? Is it acceptable to kind of feel that intensity that you're experiencing? It's a great way, again, it's not to kind of dismiss the feelings that you're experiencing, right? It's just to be able to kind of understand the situation better. So if you feel that you are kind of like a hair trigger response to everything that's kind of going on, you can ask that question, does my emotion fit the facts? Or is there another cause that's leading me to experience this quick sort of reaction? And the more, again, as I've kind of said before, the more that you ask these questions, the better you will be at understanding yourself. And that's the ultimate goal in kind of, therapy per se, right? Is being able to kind of ask these questions, have that introspection, so you can come to these conclusions. So when there is a similar or a coincidence that may occur, you're more well equipped to handle it, right? So hopefully that was a good kind of insightful questions there. As we move on to looking about what is underneath, especially kind of this little picture here about the anger umbrella. So again, ultimately the goal of this particular worksheet is just to kind of look at what is underneath, and the more that we're able to kind of identify and understand what's underneath, the better that we are able to kind of address it, especially if it's sadness, especially if it's anything that we are anxious and we're responding out of that ability for feeling scared, right? This is a little exercise. It's a good way to be able to kind of break it down in that sense. Okay. So through this again, kind of, why do we think each of these emotions evoke the anger? It kind of relates to the anger umbrella worksheet here. One of the most important things about doing these particular worksheets as well too, just to kind of preface this, is that the more you're able to kind of bring your consciousness towards what you're experiencing, the better you are at being able to recognize, hey, this is something that's happening to me, right? Think of all the times that you experience on a day-to-day basis when you were thinking about mental health and any kind of issues that are kind of going on, and how often do you really get the time to take a second and to really have that introspection, right? So even though this topic here we're reviewing is related to anger, a lot of the similar kind of, responses to kind of improve that area of mental health or whatever it is, obviously, like I said, for this example, we're talking about anger, is going to be take that 10-15 minutes for yourself to really just kind of focus on what you need in that moment, right? A lot of the kind of the spirituality check is being able to kind of get in tune with yourself and say, what is it my body needs in this moment, right? And that's ultimately where a lot of these exercises come into play, is being able to just take these moments here to ensure that we can learn more about ourselves and prevent our kind of explosive tendencies that we may exhibit, right? Related to anger or any other symptom that we may experience here. So, again, what's important too, to kind of preface this with all the self-reflection of doing these exercises, and again, as I've said this already, a lot of it is kind of universal in a sense, even though we're specifically talking about anger, but it's essentially we need to recognize what intensity that we are experiencing in that moment, right? So when we're doing these self-reflection exercises, if we feel our intensity is super high, then we're not going to be able to really kind of process this, right? So that's why when we're doing these particular worksheets, I always like to kind of be able to rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 of where you feel your intensity is, right? So on a scale, for example, like on a scale from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the best, where is your intensity of your emotion at this time, right? And you can follow this up if you Google the DBT scale of emotional intensity. It really provides a good framework for it to be able to kind of help determine where you stand with your emotion. And the more they're able to do this, the more that you're able to kind of, again, recognize what is the skill that I need in this moment, right? So let's say, for example, we're kind of talking about how someone was pissing you off, really making you upset, right? If you start to feel your emotion sliding into that, let's say, 3 to 4 range, right? Where we could say maybe it's a little more that irritation that's kind of going on that the person's doing. That's where a lot of these ability to do some mindfulness exercises, kind of, take a step back, do some reflection. Those exercises we're going to be in that moment to be able to kind of reflect on that emotion we're experiencing. When we start to veer towards that 7 to 10 range, that's when the emotion gets too intense for us to kind of do those things. And what we need in that moment are those crisis management skills. So it's important to kind of consider, because a lot of it you can think of essentially is like a fight or flight response, right? So when you're in that 7 to 10 range, it's hard for you to consciously think about, hey, like I need to plan my actions ahead, right? Because you're experiencing a threat. So it's important to kind of recognize if you are in that crisis mode. And again, this kind of relates to everything that we're talking about here, because those worksheets I just showed just a little bit there, if you're in that crisis mode, that 7 to 10 range, you're not going to be able to really reflect on that, because you're experiencing a threat. So the goal, especially related to dialectical behavioral therapy, is to reduce the emotion intensity first. So let's say if you rate yourself as an 8, get yourself down to a below a 7, 6 or 5, and then proceed with those self-reflection exercises because you'll be much more in the moment. And this can be kind of related even outside of anger too. Anger is a great kind of example for that as well. But let's say, for example, for depression, right? Depression can be very intense, and you might kind of get to the point where, and there's future lessons we'll go over, but to the point where you feel kind of immovable in the sense where you feel a lot of lethargy and difficulty in just trying to kind of get things done. That's where that intensity of emotion can be as well too. So the goal is to kind of get us out of that, use those crisis management skills, and then proceed with those self-reflection tools, just kind of like what we went over here for anger. So really, really good stuff. Highly recommend seeking out DBT, scale of emotional intensity, if you feel that that's kind of an area for you. Okay, getting back to the worksheet here, as we're kind of going through this. So again, if you feel that this is something that you have difficulty with the anger, ask the question why. Okay, so if I'm feeling anger and I'm having kind of what's underneath and I'm feeling sadness or I'm feeling jealous about this, what is the reason I am feeling jealous about this? That's invoking the anger in me. And the more we can provide that kind of cause and effect, the better we are at understanding our anger. Okay? So this last section here, a lot of it is just being able to identify what our anger is, right? And if you, I'll have to pull it up in another session here, but one of the things that we do review is a good kind of compliment. I've shared this a bunch to other individuals, is a feelings wheel, right? Anger can really kind of put you in a box for what you're experiencing. So being able to really identify, is it anger or is it a particular other variation of it that I need to identify, right? And the more you can provide an understanding of what you're experiencing, the better you are at finding a solution, an antidote for what you're experiencing, right? So looking at these kind of different types of anger, right? We have anger, aggravation, agitation, annoyance, bitterness, exasperation, ferocity, frustration, fury, grouchiness, grumpiness, hostility, indignation, irritation, outrage, rage, vengefulness, wrath. And it's interesting kind of going through all these is there's that similar theme, right? That's related to anger. But what's important is that there's a different meaning behind all of these, right? So agitation is a little different than aggravation, right? Fury is a little different than hostility. And so being able to kind of recognize what is the anger that you're having is going to be key for what you're looking for, right? So this last area here is related to kind of identifying what is the anger that you're experiencing and what are if there's any particular triggers that may occur, right? So for example, what are some prompting events that you may feel angry? Is it having an important goal blocked? Is it you or someone you care about being attacked or threatened by others? Is it losing power, status, respect, not having things turn out as expected, or physical or emotional pain? And what's important here, especially as we're kind of looking at what are these prompting events, there's always going to be kind of that other section, right? And that's where it's your job to determine, is there anything else that may lead to my anger or feelings of anger? And if you feel it's not in that category, really, it's great to kind of take a second to kind of log what were those experiences through the day. So let's say if you had an anger episode, but you're not sure what led to that, kind of go through the series of events. Think about kind of what had occurred. There's a little tool, it's called an ABC kind of scale, antecedent behavioral consequence, which allows you to reflect on, okay, what happened before the behavior of me being angry, and when I was angry, what did I do, and what was the consequence of that? Being able to kind of outline that may lead to kind of discovering the cause for the anger. All right. So, next thing here, interpretation of events that prompt feelings of anger, believing you've been treated unfairly, blaming, believing that important goals are being blocked or stopped, believing that things should be different than they are, rigidly thinking I'm right, judging that the situation is illegitimate or wrong, and ruminating about the event that set off the anger in the first place. Again, in another other section. So, as you can see here, again, that we can interpret situations that can lead us to feeling angry. And I think that's important to do as well, too. Especially the blaming one can be a very common thing. If you yourself are being blamed or you're blaming others, it can definitely lead to those feelings of anger. And I think if you are having that feeling of angry that is derived from if you are being blamed, when that does occur, what is the reason why that is causing anger? Does it have to do with any of these up here, right? The fact that you're losing kind of the power, status, or respect, right? Is that the reason? Is that the prompting event that you're feeling angry when this is being misinterpreted, right? Or is it kind of another thing, right? Is it due to more of a kind of a personal kind of impact of that, right? So, being able to kind of know the anger is key and crucial to kind of get to where you need to get to. The last kind of section here on this page is the biological changes and experiences of anger. So, as well as kind of being able to kind of identify the anger warning signs, being able to kind of recognize certain things such as muscles tightening, teeth clamping together, hands clenching, feeling your face flush or get hot, feeling like you're going to explode, being unable to stop the tears, wanting to hit someone, bang the wall, throw something, blow up, wanting to hurt someone. All big kind of important things as well too. I think what's important to kind of recognize too is everyone's anger is different, right? What your anger may look like is going to be different from someone else, and especially if we're getting kids involved in the picture, right? And with kids in the mix, a lot of that time they're experiencing this anger due to mainly the fact that a goal may be blocked or stopped, right? Especially younger kids. A lot of that anger is due to that as well too. And the more that they can kind of understand the reason why they are feeling that way, the better they are at being able to kind of verbalize that. Hey, I'm upset because of X, Y, and Z, right? Literally just tonight, my son was pissed because as my wife was putting our baby down to sleep, he was upset that he couldn't tell his mama something. And I was trying to communicate to him, like, bro, like, can't go in there because you're going to disrupt the baby that's trying to go to sleep. So obviously he didn't like that because his goal was to be able to kind of share to his mama about what he was feeling, right? And that led to a whole thing to ensue. But moral of the story is recognize again kind of the cause of that anger, right? One of the things that I don't think was mentioned here in this worksheet, but there's a section we'll go over that's related to an acronym, and there's a whole bunch of acronyms in this field called HALT. HALT is hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So related to that, it's kind of in the vein of if you're aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, is the reason that anger is occurring maybe due to not feeling your nourishment, right? Maybe you're thirsty, maybe you're hungry, maybe you're tired because you didn't get any sleep, and maybe you are lonely, right? Those kind of needs that are occurring can lead into the reasons why we may feel that way. So it's important to kind of think about, are those needs being met in order, or are they not being met, and that's what's leading to those feelings of anger. Okay? So, last section here, again, kind of how we were reviewing here about the expressions of anger. So, certain examples of this, such as physically or verbally attacking, making aggressive or threatening gestures, pounding, throwing things, breaking things, walking heavily, stopping, slamming doors, walking out, using loud, quarrelsome, or sarcastic voice, using obscenities or swearing, criticizing or complaining, clenching your hands or fists, frowning, not smiling, mean expression, brooding or withdrawing from others, crying, grinning, red or flushed in the face. All these are expressions of anger, and I would encourage you to identify what is your expression of anger. So, last section here relates to the after effects of anger. I think a lot of us are aware of what can happen from anger, right? Where there's that narrowing of attention, We're only attending to the situation that's making us angry, ruminating about the situation that's making you angry about situations past, imagining future situations that will make you angry, depersonalizing dissociative experiences or numbness. Um, there's a little anger book that if I can kind of share here if I get a few minutes. But it's being able to kind of identify and the consequences that can occur from the anger. And a lot of the time we're in that heat of the moment, it's hard to kind of recognize the consequences of that. And that's where it's important, as I was saying earlier, about being able to utilize those crisis management skills so we don't get to these after effects of anger. The more we're able to kind of learn to develop that regulation within ourselves, the better we are at preventing these things, right? Especially, for something like the rumination, where you feel is just kind of stuck in your head and it's hard to kind of get out. If we can counter what is leading us to feel that angry that may lead to us to ruminate, we can reduce that intensity that we're experiencing there. So that's kind of anger in a nutshell. The general gist of the whole thing, and a lot of it is going to be able to kind of know to get to that point to take the step back and reflect about those emotions, right? And every person's different. Every adult, child, whoever, everyone has anger in a difficult kind of reason. So it's important to kind of recognize that and also know if you feel you do need to take that step back and have that reflection for yourself. Think about the times when you are able to have that chance to do that. And if you don't, try to create that time. Even 15 minutes a day to really have that self-reflection is key. So one of the kind of the resources, I had shared this before with some people, but it is something that is called, I'm just going to pull it up here. One of the things too, especially working with kids, it can be a little different. So there's a nice tool here, especially if you go on Therapist Aid. There's a lot of kind of good resources here, but you can actually do an interactive activity with your child if you feel you're doing that. And again, like it's tough. There's a lot of things, especially kind of depending on the age of the kid, right, that you want to be aware of. But this is a nice little interactive activity you could do that you can also help with being able to, after you kind of go through the activity, you can print it out and walk them through it so that they're aware of it. So let me just be able to kind of share this here. And okay, here we go. So as you can see here, this activity here, Therapist Aid, Anger Monsters, this is kind of a good description here, and it's an interactive tool, and you can kind of see previews about it as well. They can kind of create their own monster, and you can just kind of work with them through it to be able to help them identify what their concern is, or what bugs them, or what they define their anger to be. So I would recommend that resource. Ages 5 to 10 is definitely appropriate if you feel you're working on trying to manage anger with kids that you may have. So I believe that does it for this first session. I know it was very cumbersome, and I apologize for that. This is the first time I'm doing this, so if you stuck around, I appreciate it. I'm hoping the more I do these, the more confidence I'll have to be able to kind of lead an eloquent and effective discussion related to mental health. I know I was excited kind of leading into this, and I'm eager to kind of share a lot of my knowledge and resources to you all. What I'll probably do is I'll be able to kind of post these videos for a week, and then I may remove them or I may kind of move them somewhere else in that sense as well too, depending on kind of where it is. I want to see how things hit and how things stick. But if you made it this far through the whole video, I appreciate it. And yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how these things will go. So again, I know it's a quick kind of little check in and presentation here, but hopefully you had enjoyed it. And I will check you all tomorrow as we kind of go through the next skill, which I will introduce then. But till then, here on the East Coast, so you all have a good rest of your day or evening or whatever you're doing, and I will see you all next time.